my name is Roberta Clipper, and I teach in the Department of English. And I teach creative writing mostly. And I was one of the first faculty members to teach online at Rider. Actually, back then we used Blackboard. And we really didn't have much opportunity to do video in those days. So what I did is I set up a course that would ask students to do a reading assignment, respond to it online in writing, then do a writing assignment. And then in order to have the kind of workshops that we have on student writing, usually that would take place face-to-face, we would do all of that in writing as well. So, so the students would have to respond to each other's writing on a discussion board forum. So I have not used much video for online teaching. It's always been pretty much writing. And last March, when we had to all of a sudden convert from face-to-face teaching to online teaching, I think I was pretty ready to do it because of what I had done before. And this was the first writer course, I believe, that I taught online. It was creative writing poetry. In the spring, it was creative writing fiction. And I had also taught that online several times before. So I took what I was doing face-to-face and basically I recreated it on the discussion board forums on Canvas. And I think on the one hand, it wasn't that different for students than what we were already doing, because I was already requiring written responses to their reading in order to make sure they did the reading. And I was also requiring online responses to each other's writing, because then when the students revised their writing, they could go back and look at the written comments on their work, so that those students who didn't take notes or weren't very good at taking notes in class had a written record of what people had said about their work. Maybe it's a little bit redundant, but redundancy in teaching is kind of a necessity. So, so in that sense, I think they were already doing some of that work anyway and knew that they would be responsible for it anyway. And it was just a matter of changing, changing the attendance rules, right? And changing class participation grade and stuff like that. And then maybe giving more weight to the discussion and maybe asking the kind of questions that would come up in discussion in class in order to enhance those discussions as well. And in some ways, I have a sort of vague idea about how students responded to it or not, because my communication with them, this is what happens when you teach online. It becomes, for me at least, the experience has been is that for the most part, it becomes more professional, and you don't really have those casual personal moments that you get before class and after class. They get filtered out, and everything was more or less pertaining to the course. And the only way that I knew how students were doing is if I emailed them and said, "How are you doing?" You know, for me, that was really the richness of the experience, working one-on-one with students. So for the fall, I'm trying to figure out how do I do that for a whole classroom? How do I keep a one-on-one going when in an online course, you have to plan ahead. You have to plan a lot more than you would with a face-to-face course. There's very little spontaneity. There might be some spontaneity in a video conference, but even there, I learned This summer, I used Zoom teaching in a high school, teaching high school students creative writing. And I learned that you have to plan that ahead. You have to make sure the students know when to come online. You have to know what you're going to do so that you don't waste that, however much time you're online. So all this pre-planning, it's too much for me. I think there's a lot of the intuitive and a lot of spontaneity in teaching. And no matter what you do in an online course, that suffers. So figuring out how to work that in is what I'm going to be doing between now and my first class is September 1st.